really excited to start off this Black Entrepreneur Roundtable. Really excited about the panelists, and I'll let Ed introduce them, but I'll get a little introduction about how this came to be. And so we're thinking about, my name is Kingsley Botchway, by the way, for those that don't know me. And we were thinking about, being on the Soul Festival Committee, we were thinking about ways that we could help our community of color come up with ways to build Black wealth. One of those ways is being an entrepreneur, but we're also wanting to give information and get some insight from some wonderful panelists on what that's all about and how to navigate the different systems of our community. So I wanted to introduce Ed because I told Ed he doesn't do a good job introducing himself, and he is a really, really great guy. Ed is the Vice President of Credit Administration for Midwest One. He never says that. He just say, I'm Ed, and keeps going. But that's an amazing title. And he's just been doing some things in the community. He's been really helpful with the Soul Fest. Really has empowered the Soul Fest to make it, what it is, from the fashion show to some of the other things that have been going on as well. And he's just done a wonderful job. But Ed's going to moderate the panelists. Ed's going to moderate the panel, and so we're going to have him asking the panelists some of the questions that we can go over. And then from that, we have some audience or time to ask questions as well. This space, we want to give a huge shout out to Merge and Andre Wright. So what you see on the walls is some of the stuff that was done for the fashion show last night. And if you look over to my right, actually there's some clothes and some other things from Andre. He's actually in Des Moines selling more of his material and some of his clothes at a shoe event as well. And so again, hats off to Merge, hats off to Andre, and hats off to Simeon Talley, another member of our subcommittee, and Chris Guidry over there, chilling in the back, another member of our subcommittee, and for the work that they have done to really put this panel together. So without further ado, I'll give it to Ed.
All right. Okay, well, thank you, Kingsley. Should I move this up? Are we okay? All right, okay. Well, welcome everyone to the Black Entrepreneurs Roundtable. As Kingsley mentioned, I work with Midwest One and the Credit Administration Department. Midwest One, of course, is headquartered here in Iowa City. We offer a wide variety of financial services to help our customers meet our financial goals. So we have 43 offices around our footprint. That's Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Florida, and recently Colorado. So, but locally, we are a very active community partner. We also work with the City of Iowa City with their microloan program, as well as the other economic development initiatives that they have. So just wanted to, and also finally, Midwest One is the proud presenting sponsor of Soul Festival this year. So wanted to get that plug out there. All right, thank you to Midwest One. We have, also, speaking of Midwest One, we have another Midwest One employee in the back there, Chloe Hoagland, if you wave there, okay. So my primary role with the bank is to manage the commercial underwriting team, which Chloe is a part of. We review small business and commercial loans for approval, okay. So and with the City of Iowa City, we help with underwriting those loans and ultimately funding loans. We have loans up to $10,000, all the way up to multiple $1-million projects that you see around town. So, so without further ado, I want to talk about briefly what Kingsley mentioned with the whole plan about the path to building wealth and entrepreneurship. So we have local entrepreneurs and influencers here who will help us kind of talk more about entrepreneurship, how we can get involved, some of their challenges, some of their success stories, things that we can hopefully use to consider another path. Not the only path, but another path to building wealth. All right, well, let's get started. I'd like to introduce our panelists today. To my left is Mr. Acie Earl. He's going to talk to us today about real estate investment. Mr. Earl lives in Iowa City, selling real estate and owning real estate rental properties throughout eastern Iowa. He has a couple basketball-related books in the works. He'd like to teach classes on real estate and entrepreneurship. Beyond that, his goals include taking care of his family and making sure his basketball teams are playing at a high level. So we're excited about Mr. Earl. Also to my left, we have Miss Akwi Nji, performance poet and storyteller. She was born in Iowa City, Iowa, and raised in Cameroon, Africa, the first 9 years of her life. After these unique and formative years in Cameroon, she moved with her mother and sister to a farm town in Iowa. Her experiences as a Cameroonian and then a Cameroonian American in small town Iowa provided an eclectic foundation for her early writing. As a performer, she is drawn to the communal experience that is at the heart of words being spoken and heard in public space. Ms. Nji is also involved with a nonprofit that she will share with us information about that as well. So let's welcome Ms. Nji. And finally, at my far left is Ms. Sheryl McMillan, owner of Texture's Salon. Ms. McMillan has been cutting hair since she was 9 years old, learning from her mother. She now has clients from all over Eastern Iowa, who suffer from alopecia, the clinical term for hair loss, who visit our salon and who have had trouble finding the right hair accessories elsewhere. The business has evolved since 2009, offering massage, facials, reflexology, relaxers, blowouts, keratin treatments, and color. Let's welcome Ms. McMillan. So now that we know our panelists, we wanted to talk about, let's view this as kind of a funnel. We're going to work our way out from a macro level and kind of work our way down to maybe get to some of the details as to what they've done specifically. And at the end, we'll have some questions. And we will honor our time at 11:30 to wrap up. But there will be time at the end for questions. All right? Fair enough. So how did you arrive at determining your business idea and subsequently moving forward? Now, I'm not going to call on anybody. I want, as the church folks would say, I want the Spirit to move you to
we got these ladies first.
Sounds good to me.
I can start.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of my professional background that wasn't included in the bio. I taught language arts at Washington High School for 11 years. And after I left the classroom, I went into real estate, and I was in real estate for 4 years. And I made that decision in part because I wanted to found a nonprofit organization, and I wanted to build a career as a writer and a storyteller. And so when I left the classroom, I always say I didn't leave teaching, I left the classroom. Because with the nonprofit organization that I founded after I left the classroom, we use storytelling in a variety of forms to build community and engage community. And so the organization is called The Hook, and it is born out of what I knew to be true about how when we share our experiences, our personal narratives, well-crafted, emotionally charged personal narratives, science tells us that the brain synthesizes oxytocin, and that synthesis of oxytocin leads to empathy and trust, feelings of empathy and trust. So when you are hearing someone's story, if they're on stage, or if you're listening to a song, that's what your brain is doing, is creating a sense of trust and empathy with that person whose story you're hearing. And so I thought, how can I take that fundamental truth about storytelling and build it through art? So what I saw happening in the classroom was good, right? I'm teaching the Scarlet Letter, and I'm teaching the Crucible, and I'm teaching kids how to read and write and how to be critical thinkers. But how do I build a community with these kids? How do I get them to see the importance of themselves in a larger concept of community? And so with The Hook, I thought, all right, well, I grew up in Cedar Rapids, and it was something that I wanted to exist when I was a kid. I was a writer, and I wasn't a traditional writer, so what I was writing was not necessarily what other people thought of as writing, because it was spoken word. And year after year after year went by, and nobody else was starting an organization like this, and I thought, well, fine, I'll just do it. And so we produce several strands of programming that utilize art to tell stories in a variety of ways. We have one coming up in November called Stories of Tug and War, and we'll be telling stories of veterans, of immigrants, of refugees, and we'll be putting those stories to music and dance as well.
So thank you. Now, Ms. McMillan, you have a unique business, which sounds like you had a piece of it that is not necessarily found in most salons. So how did you get started, and what led you to get started?
Actually, I worked for like JCPenney's for about 6 years, and after making them as much money as I did, I said, it's time for me to go. So I just started in a small booth myself, and I was there for about 6 years just to get the sense of running a small business, and then I started getting children coming in with alopecia, parents that didn't know what to do. We really had no one of color that knew how to work with their scalp for dermatology. So just trying to cover it so they don't get bullied at school. So now I'm thinking about how to get wigs for kids, things like that. So I started looking for a location to expand. I started working on a business plan. I started working with SBA here to get my 7-year projection. And I actually worked with Iowa City, got a small loan from them, found a location, expanded that out. It worked out really well. That was the main focus, but then we got into getting into massage, getting people in, doing reflexologies, just expanding slowly there by little bit. It's been really good. Scrapes, bruises, bumps, but it's been good. It's been a learning experience for me because I didn't have mentors to show me how to run a business. I didn't have anyone to go to, actually, as far as African American, to show me the ropes of what to do. So it was a learning experience from the gate.
Excellent. We're going to get into that a little bit later, but thank you. Mr. Earl, what led you to get started in your real estate investment practice?
I would say there's a variety of reasons or a variety of things that happen. I said one I would think is trends. I think you have to be smart and kind of see what's out there at the time. So when I was an undergrad, you could kind of start to see, and those of you who have lived here, you could kind of start to see they were starting to build more out. And then build more, going to North Liberty, build more out in Coralville, build more in Iowa City. And I could just kind of see it. And so my second year in the NBA, my wife was going back to school, and we said, okay, why don't we just get a place so that way we have a place to have instead of rent. And so we ended up buying a condo out on Scott Boulevard that wasn't even a street. So a lot of you would know, back in undergrad, we bought a condo there. And so then when, a couple years later, obviously, and Sheryl knows the deal, where our kids started growing up, because Sheryl does their hair, we said, okay, we're going to move. And my financial manager at the time was ranked 70 in the top 100 in the nation in financial management for athletes. And he says to me, you need to sell the condo and just get it off your books. And I said, I'm not sure if I want to sell it. And he goes, no, you should sell it. Now this guy's got Chris Webber, this guy's got Anthony Hardaway, this guy's got all these, Shaq, he's got all these people making all these millions of dollars. And I say, I'm just going to hold on to that one. And that's what I did. And so I held on to that one, and that kind of expanded into, getting more properties. But I think seeing trends and listening to people, and kind of following your love. But when I was a kid, my favorite game was Monopoly. And so I was the one that always would, get my brothers in the end with hotels and houses. And so that was kind of my first love, and I understood it. And I would always kind of sometimes articulate some projects and things that I would like to do in Iowa City. And then I would also say maybe listening would probably be listening to others around you, and say that, Dale Briggs was very intricate in me getting my real estate license. And Dale would said, Acie, you know all this stuff. You need to go back and get your real estate license. And at the time, Dale was working for Carousel. And I said, why don't you go get your real estate license first, then I'll get mine. You know what Dale did? He went and got his. And then he said, Acie, you got to get your real estate license. And so that's kind of how it all happened. But I think, looking at trends, seeing what's around you, and listening to people who are not only going to talk the talk, but walk the walk, and then, go into it. And like I said, Dell's one of my greatest mentors in real estate, so.
Excellent. So we have a couple themes here that I heard that I hope you guys heard as well. We heard teaching, listening, getting assistance from your community, and also recycling of dollars. You heard Mr. Earl say that Ms. McMillan does his daughter's hair, recycling dollars. Good point there. Thank you. So, in getting started, we all know that you have to kind of crawl before you walk in certain instances. So you alluded to, Ms. McMillan alluded to it earlier with different assistants she had from a business counseling perspective, and she said something else that some people are afraid of is the business plan. So, and some businesses never do a business plan; they just do it. But what was the benefit for you in doing a business plan?
Making my business plan and having a floor plan, when you walk into the bank, they're really astonished that you have that prepared. It lets them know that you're ready and that you're not just in there saying, I have this idea, that you actually thought it out and you've done the work. So they're more liable and ready to maybe loan you the money that you think you need, credit approved, whatever. But it helped me out a lot. And I think when Paul helped me out, like I said, I started and I pulled back. That fear held me back like maybe 3 years because I wanted to do it. I'm not joking. I wanted to do it. And then I was like, no, I'm not ready. Did I get back out there? But I eventually got out there. And I think when I went into the bank and having that all together, it helped me out. So I would definitely recommend having that.
Absolutely. Banks like to see business plans, for sure. That's for sure. So another important point that we heard and in what they shared with us is that they did other things prior to venturing out on their own. And that's a very important aspect of it as well, because no one just wakes up one morning at 20 years old and just starts a business and becomes successful. So it sounds like you guys built up some capital and some courage to step out on your own. So I appreciate you guys sharing that information. So let's get a little more outside of your business and let's talk about the community. Tell me about the positive experiences you had in getting your businesses started, whether it was a bank or you mentioned the city of Iowa City helped you out. Were there any other people outside of in business counseling? We talked about that. Were there any others? Was family helpful at all, or?
Oh yeah, family was definitely supportive, but my clientele was my foundation of support. They were the ones always telling me, when are you going to get out there and start your own, and expand? You need to get your own. I don't think they knew the basic fundamentals of getting out there and how difficult it is. Mm-hmm. So it did take me a minute, but just them supporting me, telling me not to hold back from my dreams of what I really wanted to do, really helped to push me out there. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that support from everybody. When I did it, they all still flowed and kept me going.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So, Mr. Earl, from a real estate perspective, there was we had the flood in the past, and in 2008, we've had the city has its, we've hearing a lot about affordable housing needs, and that seems to be a trend. Is anyone actively working with that as far as you guys are aware? Anyone looking at that as a potential opportunity? Yeah, anyone? No?
As far as
from an investment perspective?
Yeah, I think if you look around, the things that's going up now, the buildings are going up now, the 60 plexes, the 56 plexes, the 64 plexes, that's not Iowa City people. Those are outside investors who have seen what Iowa City market has done. So, like for instance, the ones right by the post office, those are 24, 34, 36s. Those are Clarks or people who are local, who can sustain having a little bit of a hit. I built an 8-plex a while back, and obviously when you have 2 units sitting, you're at a little crunch. And if you build a 24-plex, you have 4 or 5 units sitting, you're in a little crunch. But if just to build a 64-plex, an 84-plex, 90-plex, those are out-of-state companies who can afford to take a crunch. And I think in the next 10 years, like if we don't get our act back together, it's not going to be any more of us anymore, because we can't afford to build that. We can't afford to sit on units like that. And so, I think we got to find what the next trend is, and we got to find what people want and what people can afford. Otherwise, we're going to get ran out of our own market. And I think that's slowly happening. You go right behind the post office, that big crater in the ground. I mean, some of that stuff is just monumental of how that could be built in Iowa City in this market. I mean, there's only 60-something thousand people here. And there's got to be 20 of those 64 plexes at least. All down, going on Gilbert Street all the way down. I mean, Riverside. I mean, some of that stuff is scary to landlords like myself.
Another common theme amongst the panel here is investing in what they know, and you've all shared kind of what you know, from alopecia to informing the public about expression, real estate. What's the next trends as far as you guys are aware that you're willing to share? I mean, I'm sure you guys you're aware of the trends anyway. You may be working on something new but the trends that you're aware of that you're willing to share. What have you seen that the United Way coined this phrase, I guess, a couple of years ago, like what this place needs. So in your words, what does this place need from a product services perspective that maybe our audience community could benefit from?
I don't want to dominate them.
No, go ahead. You're good.
I think apps, and I'm gonna have these cards out here. It's apps. I think are the next thing that's going to come out. I think, and it's out. And I'll tell you a great story. And this is just for what people could learn from is, going back to school, getting educated is great, but also networking with the people that's in your class. So I'll tell you this great story. So I was in a business class when I went back, got my first master. There was a guy who sat on the end that I couldn't really get to. He was the smartest kid in the class. And I took note of that. A couple years later, he calls me. I took his call. He said, "Can I meet?" I said, "Yeah." He gives me an idea. I said, "I don't really like it." He calls me 2 years later. He said, "I got this app, this sports app that's coming out. It's going to be big." It turned out it was big. It actually beat the Pokemon in downloads. Yeah, it is really big.
That's big.
And so I was lucky to get in on the ground floor because I was lucky enough to notice this person in class, take his call, listen to him, and understand what he was saying, even though that's not my thing. But, respecting others who that is their thing. And I think sometimes when we get into business, we shut ourselves off of saying, well, okay, I do real estate, that's all I do. Or I do rentals, or I do basketball training. I don't know about apps, so your idea is not good. That's the wrong thing to say. So if we want to branch out, if we're looking at this, all these things, not everybody's business probably coincided, but at the same time, they were able to help each other because the dollar kept circulating. And so I would say be cognizant on the apps that's out there and people who are building apps and giving apps, because I'm sure you could probably use that in your business as far as appointments and things of that nature. And I'm looking at that, doing that stuff on my phone for credit applications and things of that nature, where I can do things on the spot. Because, like I said, with the market here, we're going to lose people if we don't. And I know that for sure. Sometimes I hate to not take a phone call because I know if I don't get the call, the Clark brothers are going to get the call, or Southgate's going to get the call, or River City's going to get the call, and that's a good renter, that I let go. So I would say be cognizant on the apps deal, and if you have more information, you guys want more information, come up and get one of these cards, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But this stuff is really getting big out there.
Any other comments on trends that you're seeing that we should be aware of?
Really? You got something for trends?
Anything?
I don't know. I think in answering that question, I suppose I have to be a little bit more specific to my industry. One of the things that I find over and over again is when I say personal narrative storytelling, nobody knows what I'm talking about. How many of you have heard of the Moth? Okay. So the Moth has been around for almost a decade. They're worldwide. And they pack houses, standing room only, with people who just stand on stage and tell their well-crafted personal stories. And Chicago has such an incredibly vibrant, live lit scene that they have spoken word, performance poetry, storytelling events every night of the week. And so this is a movement that is not a new movement, and it is happening in bigger cities around the country, more diverse cities around the country than where we are here in Iowa City or Cedar Rapids. So I have to figure out how to help our communities understand that this mode of expression is relevant, because Chicago is doing it, San Francisco is doing it. I'm going to be traveling to San Francisco in October to tell stories on stage. DC is doing it. So why aren't we doing it here, and why shouldn't we do it here? And in fact, I would argue that this is exactly the kind of place that needs it most. So in the context of what I do, you hear storytelling as a buzzword with corporations now. We're going to tell our story. So I have to look at that and go, as an organization, how does the hook leverage that conversation that's happening? Alliant Energy wants to tell its story. How do we be that organization that helps them tell their story, right? We were also, Sheryl, you were talking about some of the things that you did to get started. And it made me think about the friends that I have, the people I've run into who over and over again say, I have this idea. I have this thing that I want to do. And they've been walking around with this idea for years. And I look at them and I say, well, why aren't you doing it? What's stopping you? And there's no good answer except themselves. And so often we wait for the right time. When you have all of your ducks in a row, you're never going to have all of your ducks in a row.
That's true.
We wait for that, like if we're talking a starting line on a track, we wait until we can blast out of the blocks, when what we really need to do is just step over that line and start, And so thinking about the relevance of just taking your idea, knowing that your idea is relevant, knowing that you don't have to have all of your ducks in a row, communicating that idea to people who are going to help you along the way is something that we don't do enough of. Because I think to a certain degree, I don't know about you, but I didn't have anybody in my family who I could turn to say, how do you start a business? How do you start a nonprofit? What are the basics? So you have to feel comfortable enough asking other people for help, right? So often we just bottle that idea up and we bottle up our intentions, and we are too afraid to say, all right, what do I do with this?
No, it's true. It's very true.
Yeah, so connecting the dots here, we talked about resources. We have, in some cases, small business development centers, which are in most major universities around the country, that provide free business counseling services. We have, in our case, the City of Iowa City that has the microloan program. So say if you're at home with a business that you want to kind of get off the ground and stepping over that line, as opposed to running out of the blocks. If you're scrapbooking or cutting hair in your basement or whatever you're doing, and you want to get out, you have the microloan program that could be available. Yeah, it's up to $10,000, and then you have more loans. The more you need, it's available. But I'm just saying, to just step over the line, the microloan program. So that's a very good program offered by the City of Iowa City. And then you have your business counseling. They can help you with your business plan. So I think it doesn't sound extremely hard from what I'm listening from you guys now, because you're the experts, right? So what else does a person need? What other advice would you give a person? You've told them where to go. There's some capital involved, obviously, a little courage involved, resources, both technical and financial. What other bits of advice would you offer a person if they're considering entrepreneurship as a path to building wealth?
do a lot of research. Research other companies that are doing something similar, figure out where the holes are in what they're offering, and figure out how to create something different. I did a lot of research before I actually launched the hook. So I think that would be one thing that I would suggest is just doing a lot of research about what's out there. If you're talking about apps, what already exists, what are the services that are already being offered, and then how do you fill a niche that's not being met yet, or need?
Okay.
Mine was more of a need of what the women that were coming to me, what they needed and how I could fulfill what they needed. So that kind of got me started on making that happen.
I would say listening to people. You know, people will tell you
Oh, yeah.
what they'd like to pay for and how much they're going to pay for it if you talk to them long enough. And so my first business, I had a record label in the Quad Cities. We were the first one to have a record label. And that taught me a lot about what people paid for. We were the first one to actually produce a packaged CD, packaged vinyl, packaged DVDs, packaged cassette tapes that were actually packaged, shrink wrapped.
Right.
And so, you know, we sold the most copies ever in Quad City history because nobody had that. And then when I started my sports teams here in Iowa City, we were the only girls travel team in Iowa City area. So everybody had school teams, but we were the only one. And people said, well, yeah, if you had that, people would come up and travel. And it's true. We had kids coming up as far as Mount Pleasant, Burlington, Dunkerton, Waterloo, Cedar Falls, Quad Cities, Des Moines, Pella. We had people driving up because we were the only travel team that did certain things. And so, you know, I kind of took that mantra going into, you know, when I built my first 8-plexes. You know, we were the first ones to kind of have 2-bedroom, 2-bath, not 2-bedroom, 1-bath. So we separated ourselves because people would come in and go, oh, if we had an extra bathroom for people that come in town, and, you know, couples would be like, oh, you got your own bathroom now, you know. So, you know, you listen to what people want, you know, want, and, you know, you emulate that. And I think that, you know, is a good thing to do. I think a lot of times we think we have the idea and we won't listen to what people say because your inner circle will tell you what's kind of out there. They won't run with you to the finish line necessarily, but they'll tell you, oh, Acie, if we had this, we'd buy this. Oh, really? Okay. Oh, Acie, we do that. If you did this, we'd do this. Oh, really? Okay, well, hey, I'm going to invest in this. Well, I'm not ready to do that yet. And that's when you can't say, well, okay, if your inner circle isn't ready, you're not ready. That's not necessarily true. You know, and don't be afraid to fail.
Right.
You know, I've had 5 or 6, 7, 8 businesses. Only 2 or 3 of them have been profitable. But the rest have taught me lessons along the way, you know. And if you look at Richard Branson, you look at Puffy Combs, you look at Dr. Dre, you look at all these other people who've had businesses, not all their businesses have succeeded either. You know, one of my great stories that I always listen to is the Walt Disney story. If anybody doesn't know, Walt Disney was never alive when he saw Walt Disney World. He died before Walt Disney World is Walt Disney World. I think he had 3 or 4 loans. He went into bankruptcy, went into 3 or 4 bankruptcy. He never lived to see Walt Disney World, but he understood what it was going to become, and he believed in it. And I think lastly, I would say is invest in yourself. Don't go out and have everybody try to get, you know, dollars to invest when you're not investing in yourself. If anybody ever Googles the Pump Brothers, if you might have heard of the team Pump and Run, the Pump Brothers took care of me. I played for their first AAU team ever when I was 16. They called me when I was in the NBA. They wanted to buy a house. They called me and said, I want you to loan me some money. At the time, one of them drove a BMW, the other one drove a Mercedes. They said, in order to prove to you how much committed we want you to buy this house, we're going to sell our cars and drive Camrys for 2 years. They sold their cars and drove Camrys for 2 years. They bought a $1 million house in Chatsworth, And then 2 years later, they bought their regular cars. But they committed in themselves. They didn't come out to me and say, I want you to invest in us, but we're not going to invest in ourselves. So at the end of the day, you have to invest in yourself. And if you're not going to invest in yourself, nobody's going to invest with you. And so, take that in consideration as you go forward, because people look at you. What the clothes you're going to buy, what the jewelry you wear, what watch you're going to wear, what car you're going to drive. So I proudly still have my Honda that I drive around.
Excellent. I mean, as a banker, hearing Mr. Earl say, invest in yourself, is just music to my ears. And one of the main reason is a lot of businesses wonder, well, why do I have to put any money into my idea? Because it's your idea, number one, but number two, from a bank perspective, if you have skin in the game, then you want to see it succeed just as much as we do. So thank you for saying that so eloquently. I appreciate it.
And my wife don't drive a Honda, but you see that, Cheryl?
Yeah, I see that.
I drive a Honda.
That's all right. So I think at this point we've covered quite a bit of ground, from getting started, resources you can find to help you get started. We talked about courage. It doesn't take a great sprint out of the starting blocks to get started. You can start as small as you want and then grow as large as you want as well, with the proper preparation via business planning, business counseling, resources from your family, friends, banks, other sources. So thank you guys for sharing that. Before we go into questions from the audience, I'd like to give you an opportunity to say anything else that I may not have covered that you think is important in this space. Okay.
I just got one great story for somebody. Andre. We all know Andre, right? So, like I said, I had one of my business. I had a printing business. I just started out, and I met Andre. Andre used to do printing at the Hawkeye games. If some of you don't remember, he would print up shirts at the Hawkeye games semi-illegally.
I'm not going to record that.
Right. It's suggested but not proven. And we kind of networked a little bit because he had some things that I needed. I had some things that he needed. And I said we should go into business together and give the public these things, because he couldn't do it mass produced, but I could do it, but I wasn't as good as him to do it. And I said, Andre, we got to work together. And he kind of paddled around. And I said, okay, this is what I can do. Can you do this? And he's like, no, I don't want to do it. So long story short, he couldn't do it anymore. They cracked down on him. And we had that relationship. And then his son was growing up, and his son came and played for me. So then we had that relationship. So he kept doing the printing. He got better at it. And I said, he goes, by the way, what's your main job? I said, my main job is real estate. And he goes, okay. He said, at some point I need to buy a house because I need to do more printing. I can't do it in my apartment. And I said, yeah, when you're ready, let me know. I said, I do real estate. I have my real estate license. When you're ready. That went for 2 years. Now, not once did I ask him, hey, are you ready yet? You ready yet? Yeah, whenever you're ready. Ready, I got that house for you whenever you're ready. So I never forget, I'm driving, he calls me, I'm ready. We just got approved. We need to buy a house. I said, Dre, you sure? Yeah, I'm ready. Next day, I show him 3 houses. He puts an offer on a house. Rest is history. You can see by the quality of the stuff he's got going on, he's got a little space now to operate. So, sometimes, learning from your failures and learning when people aren't ready is a great lesson to learn, and let people come when they're ready and be ready when they're ready. Because if I wasn't ready that day, if I didn't take his call, he'd probably go somewhere else and buy a house. Because like I said, he put an offer on a house in 24 hours from being approved. So when you get that call, and this is what you do, you better do it, because you'll lose that. You'll lose it.
So there goes that recycling dollars theme again.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot for that. The other other point you made, it reminds me of a sportscaster I listened to, and he says, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So, good point there.
Hey, I got 2 cell phones, so hey, you don't answer on, you answer on one, call the other.
There
I'm
we
gonna
go.
answer.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot, panel. At this point, I'd like to open it up for questions from the audience. If you have any questions for our esteemed panelists about themselves, their businesses, or myself, either way. Yes, ma'am.
My question is to you, AJ, that's correct?
Acie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Andre's son is AJ.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
How long have you been in the real estate business, and what type of, how is it going? Talk about the fluctuations with.
Oh, it fluctuates very highly. I got in at 2008, which was the worst time to get into it because of the market. But, you know, that was the time in my life when I had a law. I made a bet with myself saying, if I wasn't going to coach this year, I'm going to go get my real estate license. So I went and got my real estate license 2008, the market crashes. So at that time, there were 780 something real estate agents. By the next year, it was 450. People got out of the game. But I didn't necessarily get in it to make money. I got in it because I wanted to be closer to the business because I knew I was going to build it one day. And I knew there was a lot of people who needed help, like Andre, who didn't really know who was going, who could trust, who needed somebody who they can trust, who can talk to them in layman's terms, who not get talked over, and people who would take time. And I tell people all the time in real estate agents have a ceiling and a floor. A ceiling means, and you know this, the ceiling means you get to a certain point, you make more commission dollars. If I sell $4 million, $3 million, my commission now changes. A floor means you have to get so much business, otherwise they kick you out of the office. And so I don't have a ceiling or a floor. So I could take a deal for $30,000 and I could take a deal for $1 million. I'm still gonna get the same commission. And so I tell people that all the time, be wary of what agents you work with because most of them have a ceiling or a floor. Yeah.
Another question, do you see the
Hold on, ma'am.
value, do you see the value of having a black-owned real estate agency versus all of these others that are in the city? And if so, do you see that happening within the near future?
I do see the value. Just like with any business, in any black business, you know, people still have to do what they say they're going to do. You know, people still have to pay. People still have to pay the market rate. People still have to do maintenance and things of that nature. And I think sometimes when we get into black businesses, people of our color say, well, can I get it cheaper than whatever? And, you know, and I don't mind going down a couple dollars for people on a per basis, but, you know, I think you still have to have that foundation of business. Business is business, then there's black business. Okay, so you still have to do business.
Yeah.
And if you don't do it business-wise, it's not gonna work. You know, Cheryl is not gonna take people that say, well, can you do my hair for $20?
Right.
When down the block, it's $30.
Right.
You know, you still gotta pay the going rate,
Right.
you know? And so I think that's sometimes where we get in trouble with is, you know, we think that we should pay less than the going rate.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, how y'all doing? My name is John Howard. I got a question for three of y'all. This late woman, what's your name again, man?
Cheryl.
Cheryl,
Yeah.
Miss Cheryl. You and
Ed.
Al, right?
Ed.
Ed, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we need name tags up here.
Ed, okay. My first question to you is, in the startup of your business, how critical was it in the first 5 years
It
to
was
keep
to keep it
to keep it like ongoing?
ongoing. Being that my salon was sole proprietor based, which means I had to get people in to rent a booth from me. And you know what? The first 4 months, it was just me in there by myself. But I'm still on my faith. So one by one, because one knew someone else that wanted to get out and be their own entrepreneur, sole proprietor, they all start coming in. So within 6 months, I had mine filled. But the weird thing is when I got my loan, which was in 2008, the recession hit right after that. So then in '09, when my salon is done and built, now I got to start getting it filled up. I'm working on it, but it's still me in there by myself. But eventually they all came, and I was able to sustain it. So I was very fortunate. I'll just put it that way. But it fluctuates, just like Acie said. You know, we kind of flow with the college of how things go in Iowa City. So you're high and then you're low. People going on vacations, you get real busy, and then, you know, they're gone for whatever time, so you get slow. So you just kind of look back a year, see what you're slow. You can know what you can do and can't do. So you got to pay attention to all of that. It all plays a part.
Okay, and the next question is for you, Mr. Acie. Okay, I heard you mention something about that you had a record label in the Quad Cities. I was wondering.
Venom.
I was wondering, as far as with your the album sales and everything, did you go through someone else as far as for like promotion and?
You know, we were lucky at the time that during the '90s it was the whole you bring the music to the label. You know, the whole Puffy where he had Bad Boy and Death Row and you know, the Master P era with No Limit. So we were based on that model where if we brought the music to the record label, they would pay us. The issue is you had to bring good music to the record label or something that would sell. And so that was the hard part, is to go out and get great music and go out and get great musicians. Because even if you package it and produce it and mix it right, at the end of the day, if it's not good, it won't sell. So that was the hard part. So that taught me a valuable lesson that our artists weren't investing in themselves. So they would come to the studio sometimes and not have their rhymes memorized or written. They want to write in the studio. It's like, no. You got to write at home and then come to the studio. That's how it works. And so that taught me in my later businesses to invest in people who are ready. People want to do maintenance for me. Okay, come on, do maintenance. Well, I don't have my tools. Well, how you going to do maintenance? You see what I'm saying? Things of that nature. Oh, you want to buy a house? Okay, well, have you have a pre-approval letter? No, I haven't been to the bank yet. Well, that doesn't work like that. So, you know, that lesson taught me you have to be ready and put everything together. So, like, if you don't have a little package together as an artist, a little picture, a little bio, a little sample, something, then you're not ready. I can't do that for you, too. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, my last question is for you, sir. Is Midwest One Bank a black-owned bank?
No.
A profoundly no.
That's the short answer. The longer answer is there are black people who own shares of the bank that don't equate to a majority ownership share. So
Kind of like Jay-Z in the net.
like 1%. Yeah.
You know, a seat at the table.
Yeah.
So yes. Yes, sir. Mr. Teague?
Yeah, so this is, I guess, is really a general question relating to the theme of dollars circulating in the black community. And I really appreciate this, the panel and everything that you all shared. So when we talk about dollars circulating in the black community, there's a lot of elements to that. That is definitely, you know, your wife going to a black-owned business, you know, to use the product. That is employees that are African American descent working in the establishment. So there's a book, and it's called Our Black Lives, and there was a lawyer in Chicago that took 1 year off just to go to black-owned businesses to try to see, you know, what's out there. It was hard for her to find. It was easy to find churches, barber shops, and, you know, hair salons, but and a few restaurants. But as far as the liquor stores that is like on every corner in the black community, it was non-black owned, and there was trillions of dollars that black people spend on liquor, clothes and all that other stuff. So I guess my question to the panel would be, you know, how do you see, you know, the Black community coming together in any fashion to really, and it's not to be against non-Black businesses, but we do know that in Mexican communities, Asian communities, and all those other ones, they actually support themselves. I mean, you go there and all the stores are owned by them.
Yeah.
And so in our community, the reason why, one of the reasons why there's still an increase of poverty or, you know, less money circulating in the community is because we don't own those businesses, and we're not hiring Black-owned people or black people. So just wanted to see what you all thought about that.
I'm more than willing to let someone in my establishment that is of African American or what have you, as long as they have a good business sense and they're hungry and they're on that grind. You know what I mean? Because you got to work for everything because you're on your own. But it's kind of hard to find that, and I'm just being honest. I've had a couple, but I want to work when I want to. They make an appointment, then they don't show up. Now they're looking at me like, where's this person at? But you just got to have your professional mindset ready. So if you're coming in, you want to be professional in an environment that I must have, and I won't take anything less, I'm more than willing to help you get yourself started. I truly am, but you have to have your mindset ready. You want to be be professional at all times.
In the context of what I do, I thought I'd build it and they'd come. Like, here's an opportunity for you to feel engaged in the community, for you to share your voice, your perspective, because part of what we do is, part of our mission is to give the marginalized people in our community an opportunity to share their voice. So my struggle is that oftentimes Black people don't come because they don't want to be in the minority. You're going to come, the audience is predominantly white. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean they don't want to hear what you have to say, or that they shouldn't hear what you have to say. So I actually struggle getting a diverse audience to attend my events, even though this is designed for them explicitly. And I think that there's a certain mindset as a culture that we have to grow out of, which is that discomfort we feel when we are the minority in the in the room, because that will never change if we don't show up. Mm-hmm. It'll never change if we don't show up.
That's very true.
So I work really hard to curate events where our featured artists are ethnic minorities, religious, from different religious perspectives. So I work hard to curate them, but then the audience doesn't show up to support them, you know? So I struggle with that.
Mm-hmm. Like for instance, my main maintenance guy is African American. So I gave him a shot. I never forget, I was in Hy-Vee, and I'm coming out, and he's coming in, and he goes, hey, you know, I see your signs all around, I do maintenance. And I go, really, what do you do? And he reached in his back pocket, and he had a flyer made. He had a little pamphlet, and it had everything he did. He had his logo on it. I said, I'm gonna call you. That might have been his most important time in his life. He had a flyer made. He invested in himself to have a flyer made for that opportune time. And I have a rule that I used to teach my artists, and I teach people all the time. I never leave my house without business cards or something to hand to somebody. Yeah. And sometimes, like yesterday, I was running a camp, and a guy was talking to me, and I was setting up, and he was talking to me about my books and stuff, and I was like, dang, I should have gave him a book flyer. Why didn't I do that? So, I mean, you have to have that mindset to be successful. And, and if I don't hand out 1 or 2 or 3 a week, then I feel like I didn't do my job as marketing myself. Right. And so then your other part of your question is, what do you see as a trend, like a Black-owned business? I think either getting into like a Uber or Lyft situation, where, you know, we can empower some African Americans to drive, because you see the Africans have them, and the other, there's like the Palestinians or something, I can't remember, you know, Arabs have the taxis, and so we don't have the taxis, you know? And so that might be something to look into, is to looking into that. Like I said, look at trends. Like Hawkeye football weekend, there's not enough taxis. Homecoming weekend, the Black reunion weekend, there's not enough taxis around. Basketball game weekend, there's not enough graduation, there's just not enough taxis around. Not enough Ubers around, you know? So that might be something to look into. What's the trend? What do we see? What do we see that's here, that's already in our backyard, where we don't have to reinvent the wheel?
Right.
To kind of tag along to that too, you know, there are some, you know, maybe some bad apples who, you know, who employ or you know, want to perform services, but that by no means speaks to the entire lot. So just wanted to make sure we clear that up. And let me just throw a plug in for Soul Festival. While we're talking about volunteering, getting involved, if you guys want to get involved, be sure to see myself or one of the other members here to help, because kind of to what you said, in the Black community, there's talk about there's not enough stuff for us to do. And when there are things to do, people don't necessarily come out to support it. So today is your opportunity to pull us aside and say, I'd like to volunteer. Because I usually do this around February when I remember the people who told me about there wasn't anything to do. I say, well, hey, we're meeting, so come on out and share your thoughts on that. So I just wanted to mention that. There were a couple other questions. Mr. Wilburn?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Ross Wilburn, and I've been in Ames for the last couple of years, but I'm a former mayor and council member of Iowa City. And I remember back in the 2000s when just a small idea in terms of local government helping. We had taken community development block grant funds that come from the city and set aside a small portion for underrepresented groups, minorities, to get a loan. And so I'm soon to announce my candidacy for governor of Iowa. And my question for you, I mean, you've all talked about kind of getting yourself ready and taking that step. But what message might you have for local government officials or statewide government officials in terms of what things could be helpful in terms of creating an environment that can help more Black-owned business, more people of color owning business?
That's
I don't
a
know
good one.
we got a lot of people moving in the community without just basic fundamentals of training. So any kind of voc rehab type of just getting them prepared, teaching them basics of going in so you can get your GED or whatever, and be an electrician or being a plumber, or just getting them set up so they can eventually be an entrepreneur. So if we can find some kind of basis for that to get them started, I think that'd be a great program, because I don't know if they still have that.
I don't know of any formalized mentorship sorts of programs, formalized opportunities to gain some of that basic knowledge that, like I said, I perhaps wrongly presume that our families are not necessarily made up of people who have the background that some white families have when it comes to starting businesses. Okay. And I have friends who I graduated from high school with who have had no problem starting their own businesses and flourishing quickly because they had parents who knew the ropes. So I don't know if there is already a formalized system in place specifically for Black entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs of minority entrepreneurs, but it seems to me that there's a need for that.
So I believe, I'm just going to jump in real quick. I believe that Andre actually, who
has he started
works
something?
here, I think he sets people up with mentorships.
Yeah.
So one of the things he does is if you come in here to merge, he'll work with you to figure out what it is you want to do. He'll find a business leader in that area and he'll match you up together. Okay. So that's his job, yeah. As Kingsley said.
That's good to know.
And I do a shadowing program with the University of Iowa. This year I had 4 or 5 athletes, and it's the same deal. They just match you up with what you want to do. The athletes call me and say, hey, can you come? And I bring them into the office and, show them leases and show them real estate stuff or show them camp stuff. So I think programs like that is what we need, where, kids could come in and say, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. So, yeah.
So,
I do want to talk on what you all are talking about right now. But my name is Terrence Murphy, and I'm the executive director of Journey Above Poverty Foundation, which is a newly based foundation in North Liberty Island. And that's one of the main things that we offer this summer to our kids was programs that you all are talking about right now, where we look at, we have the youth. It's a mic. We had our youth on the first day come in and get to know us, and we got to know them, find out what they're interested in, and the things that they weren't interested in as well. We went out and got the business owners or business entities to come out and explain to the kids how they got to where they got to, whether it was through the collegiate way or whatever route they took. But I just wanted to touch bases. That does exist, even though I'm new in this. It is out there in North Liberty so far. So,
feel free to reach out.
the mic. Yep.
Maybe Cedar Rapids is lacking what you guys apparently already have.
My name's Mark Chafee, and I used to teach here at the U. I taught sociology for 11 years. And one of the reasons I stopped is because I became really frustrated with the sense in which I noticed in my minority students, both of color and of gender, that they approach risk really differently than a lot of white males approach risk. All right, and it's easy to understand relative to community. I taught in Kansas City Central High School, 100% black, classrooms of 52 students, no textbooks, no maps, no periodicals. Risk isn't the thing you learn other than how I'm going to make a hustle that keeps me going. All right, so one of the things that I think I want to just challenge us to all think about too, because I worked in rural development now since '95. It's taken me to West Africa. I'm working on projects right now in Oman. We're getting ready for Chad and Iraq and Fiji. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because one of the things that you have, when you look at the walls and what the story of the walls is about, is the system that we live in, right? And part of what you have to ask yourself is, am I simply building myself into a system that today has the highest inequality in American history? And I'm trying to win while the whole system wants a whole lot of losers, right? So right now in the world, there's 1 billion people making less than $1 a day. There's 2 billion making less than $2 a day. And I want to win. Well, is that really, this is the path of winning, right? We're going to burn each other's cities. We're going to kill each other's children. I'm going to ask you to take on a uniform because I'm white, old male, right? And I'm going to go kill these kids. So that's something you have to think about as you start becoming a young entrepreneur, right? Is, am I simply trying to win in a system that wants a whole lot of losers at the most violent levels possible, okay? So we're working on food security in Oman. Why are we working on food security? Because in 2007, corn went to $7 a bushel in Iowa, tripling the price of corn in the developing world. 29 nations erupted in riots. Tunisia, Egypt, Libya toppled governments. All right? So what is Oman building food security for? People without food, people without shelter, people without jobs, they take down governments. All right? So are we simply teaching ourselves to try and fit into a system that's exceedingly internally broken? Or are we also trying to think through, how do we not burn each other's cities by what we're trying to do? Okay.
Excellent points. Thanks a lot, because that's one of the things that we have with our group. This whole weekend is looking at the various phases of African American life. You know, from the entertainment to food to the book panels that we have going on at Prairie Lights to this business panel we have here today. Just different aspects of our lives. We have our marketplace outside, our vendors outside where you can practice recycling dollars. So we appreciate the social element as well. So thank you for that. Do we have another question?
Yes.
Hi, Ed. My question's for you. My name is Lucy Joseph. I live and work here in Iowa City. I work for the City of Iowa City in Neighborhood Development Services with the Housing Rehab Program, as well as coach at City High here in Iowa City. So, Ed, my question is for you. How many minority individuals are you seeing monthly, yearly, that are coming to you with business plans?
Not a lot. Now, to be fair, I work on the underwriting side,
Okay.
the analysis side, so we review applications after they've come in. So I don't see people as much as someone who would work on the branch level.
Okay.
That being said, I do work with Tracy Haichu
Yep,
and Chris Ackerson as well with the city on, working with people on business planning, and we've talked to a lot of different people in town through those programs, and that's where I personally find a lot of satisfaction in financial literacy. Helping people understand credit, the basics, because if you don't understand credit, life could be difficult. It's just not if you're starting a business. We're just buying a car. Would you rather pay 2% or 12%? So I don't see a lot through my work, but through my work with the City of Iowa City, that's kind of not necessarily my main job, but I do see a lot of people through that.
And then my second question would be, what do you think it's going to take to get more minority businesses within the downtown district? With this being like the heart of the town, a lot of our minority businesses are on the outskirts of the city. So what is it going to take to bring some of those minority businesses here? We're seeing it because this is a high population area and people are coming through here all the time, but they're not seeing our businesses because how many students are actually making it out to Southeast Iowa City, you know what I mean? Well, now that they have, projects going out that way, it might increase, but what do you think it's going to take to bring more minority businesses within the district here?
Well, I think, from my perspective as a banker, as there's a guy that's been circulating on the internet, I think maybe he's from New York or something, who says the rent is too high.
It's very
Right?
high.
So that's the first thing.
Very high.
The rent is high downtown because of its location. But then the other thing we have to think about is, what does this community need? I know whenever talking with the downtown district previously, they talked about like children's clothing store could be something. Non-alcohol related businesses is what the city has been talking about the last few years. So those are just some things to think about. And I would encourage anyone to visit with the downtown district to ask them what they're looking for. So Nancy Bird, I think, is still in charge there. And speak with them about what they're looking for downtown, because maybe there could be an opportunity for someone to get in. Because I'm sure the downtown district is open to all types of businesses, so I would seek them out. Anybody else have any comments on the downtown area? Have you ever looked at property
Well, I
downtown?
just saw, they just sold, or the building was up for auction. I don't know, I didn't hear,
Was it the Union building where the
Yeah.
Union? Okay. Yeah.
So it's like 4 stories. And so there's a lot of space in there. So whoever has that building whoever bought that building is going to probably be apt to kind of move some new people in and do something new, probably out of the box thinking. So that's all I've heard so far.
Okay. We want to make sure, we have probably about 5 more minutes.
We have at least a couple more questions.
Okay, sure thing.
I'm Bernard Clayton. I'm from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I'm the Vice Chair of the Black Caucus of the Iowa Democratic Party. I got 2 questions for you. I was in Dubuque, and I suggested to some people to approach their the economic development department in city government about microloans. In Iowa City, how did that process work? Did the community approach the city council, or did the city council? I mean, and I know it's a long, complicated process. I just want to keep it simple. How was that microloan thing initiated?
That was definitely a community partnership. Midwest One has always had a relationship with the city of Iowa City, so in the economic development part of the business. So they had like the building facade program where businesses could improve their exterior appearance with assistance with the city. And I mean, Midwest One, and along with 2 other financial institutions in town, took part in that. So when the whole crowdfunding process, the GoFundMes, the other types of programs that are out there, social media programs out there, the city wanted to have something that that was available to its residents. And we were already working together, so it's just a matter of us talking with different community members. We talked with different social service providers in town, along with bankers around the table, and we figured out a program that would work to provide that need for loans, again, up to $10,000, 3%, which is great. Why is it great? Because you can't get a loan for under 4 or 5% for a bankable deal. You know, that's assuming everything is just, great credit, great business, history of financial success. We're doing this for startups. So, so thank you for that question. And I'm more than willing to talk to Dubuque we can work that, get that done, yeah.
And my second question is, as people of African descent in this country, we are affected by racism. And how do business people stay in business and stay profitable in a large community? And how do you even broach that subject? Do you ignore this subject? Or how can business people deal with that subject in a positive way to try to advance the community?
I'm gonna let y'all touch that
Well,
one.
so situation with me, so I had planned for the last 10 years to build a sixplex on a lot I have in North Liberty. I finally got the plans. I went to the city, I did the business plan, I did the application. The city zoning committee voted me down, 05. Went to the city council, they voted me down, 06. So I've been the only one to be voted down in the last 2 years. And I had everything, everything in order. There was neighbors around who basically sent emails and personal phone calls saying that they didn't want Acie Earl to build because of the clientele that he was going to possibly bring, because I have African American renters, and they didn't want African American renters or owners around their property. They thought it would bring their property value down. So, I mean, to leave that meeting was very emotional for me. I was almost crying going home, driving home. Then I said, okay, what can I do better? Like 24 hours later, I said, what can I do better? So I went back, tweaked the plan, said, okay, I won't build 6, I'll build 4. They said no. I said, okay, can I build 3? They said no. Can you build 2? I said no. They said, we don't want you to build at all there. So you can look at it 2 ways. Of course, there's probably some racism involved, right? Of course. People said that, other people on the board came, other neighbors have said, of course, you can look at it and you could say that. But that's still not going to get you anywhere in life. And for the broader picture, the bigger picture. Like I've said, I failed before. It's been a while since I failed, but I failed before. And so that's always going to be the case. It's always going to be around. You can look at it and say, okay, I can go crazy, I can go ballistic, I can yell and scream, I can file a lawsuit, I can do all these things. But is that going to make me a better business or a better person? Or is it going to be a better situation? Am I going to be successful in it or not? And so, it's not the first time I've experienced racism in my life. It's not going to be the last. And so I took it as a teaching moment. And, I spent all this money on plans and architecture, and it's a wash. So that's always going to be around. Look where we live in, right? This city was not intended for African Americans to live here full-time, year-round. All right? That's true.
That's true.
Okay? But we are living here full-time, year-round. Okay? And it's a process. So I might not build this year, might not build next year, might build in 15 years, might build in 10 years. I learned from it. I took it as a learning point. And so I think a lot of times we can look at racism things around, we can hang our hat on it if you want to, but it's not going to change anything. You know, it's just a slowly progression of how you can all get better and how we can all get better and use it as a learning point. So, I mean, I'm not going to look at it and, you know, I went into city council the other day, I paid some water bills. I didn't have a bad attitude. You know, I could have had a pissy attitude. I could have said something smart. I could have did this. I said, no, I'm better than that. You know, and I'm not going to let that affect me. So I just think that sometimes we use those, we hang our hat on racism when we shouldn't. You know, you look at this place, my kids live in a very good area. They go to a great school. They have a great school district, and none of my kids have been called the N-word in school. That's very good, and because I didn't grow up that way, and maybe some of you guys didn't grow up that way. So I mean, we've made a lot of strides here, and we're not done. But like I said, don't let racism stop you. Don't hang your hat on it, because it's always going to be here.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
Is there another one? One last question?
Hi, everyone. My name's Annette Martin. I'm from Iowa City, was born and raised here, and have a degree in social work, and I've had two businesses, two cafes, one in Washington, D.C. and one in Maryland. And to your point about what people can do around helping people learn how to work and whatnot, in D.C., the Department of Employment Services has a program called Project Empowerment, and it helps people coming out of who've been formerly incarcerated, people who have underemployed or never been employed, have substance abuse, and they put them through a 3-week training program, and then they go out into the community for 3 to 6 months and learn whatever skill they're looking for. So in our cafe, we help people learn how to be cooks, chefs, and servers, and maintenance. Mm-hmm. And we did that for both of our cafes, and that's how we ran the cafe. Mm-hmm. So that was very successful that way. My question is, I'd like to bring that concept to Iowa City. I'm back home. My mother's 96 years old, and so that's a blessing for living in Iowa. I do have to give Iowa props on their health care or some of their treatment of the elderly, because they're very much committed to helping people live. And another program, I'm disabled, and so I go through Voc Rehab. And that's a major program that's very helpful to helping people come back into the workforce. And hopefully through them, I can start my small business in Iowa City. But both of my businesses, my sister and I, who's also a social worker, she went to the University of Iowa. But what I'm getting at is we use our own personal money. We didn't get loans or anything, so we're tapped out at this moment. And so it's between GoFundMe and Please Fund Me time for us. But I'm glad to be home. We've had a different. It's really interesting coming home, because this is like my third, fourth Black event that I've been able to come to. I went to Black Iowans. There was one about. There was a workshop or a conference on being Black in Iowa. There was something about civil rights movement and unions, and now this Soul Fest. And I'm sending everything to my brothers and sisters, okay? Because they're like, what? What's this going on in Iowa now? I went up to Weatherby Park the other day and took pictures. I mean, it's very good. It's great. I mean, my family was one of the first Black families in the 50s to stay and be a part of Iowa, and grew up and everything. So if you search the archives of the Press Citizen, you'll see the Martin name come up in various ways and means. But that's how we were back then. I mean, we were a part of the community, but we were also being beat up and called names and everything else. But I'm saying this to say thank you for doing this. And anybody who wants to talk to me about starting my business, I'm here.
Great. Well, thank you. We have to be mindful of our time. We said we're going to keep it to 11:30. We just ran over just a little bit. So and at this time, I want to wrap up with some final comments. We want to give Merge and Andre Wright another shout out for providing the space today. I am not this artistically inclined. This was here last night, so I can't take the credit. This is all Andre's doing. He has his clothes here available that you can see him next week to talk to him about those. This space that we're in, Merge and the Iowa City Collab, they have desk space available. They have office space available for small businesses if you want to set up and your own office space here. They have various rates that are very reasonable. So consider this as a space if you want to get out of your house or wherever you are to get into a more professional space. Visit the City of Iowa City's Economic Development website for information about financial economic programs, small business development centers around the universities that could provide business counseling. Let's see. We also want you to recycle the dollars that are in your pocket. You can get started right after you leave here. It's about lunchtime. There are vendors at the end of the Ped Mall there. You can get started today in the next 5 minutes. So you can get started with that. So we want to thank our panelists finally for their time. It's a Saturday, and I know a lot of people get their hair done. And Ms. McMillan has spent some time with us. So thank you to all of our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause. And finally, feel free to enjoy the rest of the weekend. There's a lot of exciting activities from entertainment to food. We have gospel tomorrow. We have blues later on tonight. There's a lot of things to get involved with, so feel free to get involved for the rest of the weekend. So thank you again for your time. So thank you all for your time.